Hello, and welcome to Generation AI, the podcast where we demystify artificial intelligence in the world of higher education. I'm your host, Ardis Kadiu, and with me today is JC Bonilla, Dr. JC Bonilla. Hey, JC.
What's up? For a second, I think you forgot, where we were, what we do here. Artists, you haven't intro us in 3 episodes because we just came out of this series. So, man, you're rusty. What's up with this, huh?
I know. It's a lot of stuff has been happening in the world of AI over this last 3 weeks. What we've been doing, if you haven't been following over the last 3 episodes, we've dropped Agentic AI Unleashed. So a 3-part series on all about Agentic AI, the frameworks, multi-agent architectures, and of course the AI workforce, which was the last one that we dropped last week. And, we have not talked a lot about what's happening in the world of AI as it pertains to this last 3 weeks. And there's just a lot happening.
It's a catch-up episode, huh? A catch-up episode.
Yeah, it's a catch-up episode, but also it's an interesting episode because we're going to be focusing on manifestations of AI agents that are actually coming to market and you can use today as well as part of our tools. So I'm really excited to kind of talk around a few of those, specifically stuff that's come out from OpenAI with their operator and with Deep Search.
Lot to cover, so let's jump in. Though, also in these past 3 weeks, a beautiful partnership has come to us in the higher education space. So we must spend time on this. So not only want to talk about this kind of review of technology and agents in the market, but California State, CSU, has announced their partnership, Artists. And we want to spend time with partnership with OpenAI. I want to spend time what it means and kind of do a little bit of a recap from my point of view, because, let's start from this. I'm just thrilled and excited what's happened. So, Artists, California State University has partnered with OpenAI. They're going to be providing for more than 500,000 students. Of course, there's a large educational system and about more than 60,000 faculty members across 23 campuses. So this is an enterprise system approach. Access to ChatGPT Enterprise, specifically their educational component, right? And this makes officially, after Element, the largest deployment of AI in higher education to date. The largest deployment of AI in higher education. So this is really exciting. It means 3 things. Specifically, on the system enterprise, they're going to be building this AI Common Hub. It's a centralized platform, AI tools, training, certification, where everyone, faculty, students, staff, will benefit from it. Then, obviously, as you give these basically tools and infrastructure, it's about running AI education and innovation, an AI educational innovation agenda. How do we empower faculty? How do we start basically doing training and tooling around enhancing teaching, research, learning? So in other words, how do you start bringing all these hubs into the day in and day out of the university? Teaching, research, addressing faculty concerns, but also trying to put on the administration through an AI workforce training. And I think they've been hearing us because we have been talking about this so much. But CSU will have apprenticeship programs, will have kind of people coming with real world industry examples, upskilling their graduates. So they're also looking at people outside the campus environment. So it's really exciting. So bottom line, a gigantic initiative. And it's not only about adopting the AI, it's about how to use it and building the programs that serve as the educational system. So that's the brief. Let's chat about it, yeah?
Sure. Yeah. The biggest, I won't say shock here, but the biggest news is that you have a very large institutional system adopting, or at least putting in front, all of their students, their staff, their faculty, a unified AI assistant, right? So this is ChatGPT. So we've been using ChatGPT. Everybody's been using it for a while. However, what they're saying is that, hey, we're going to make it available for everybody now. But we want AI adoption, and this is one of the largest deployments of ChatGPT out there with 500,000 plus users all at once in one institution. This is really interesting for higher education because what that means is that if you remember, Arizona State University was one of the first to do the partnership last year with OpenAI, and they're a pretty large institution, but they had to put a lot around wraparound services around ChatGPT and the deployments. Not only did they have to make the tool available, but they also had to do all of these training and courses, and how do you incorporate it now into your classroom. And this is exactly what you're talking about, right? The AI workforce training, the educational innovation, the Common Hub. And what this means is that students and institutions are now getting exposed to these AI tools or these AI chatbots, which is a step forward around AI literacy, right? How successful is it going to be? Are a lot of those students using currently some of these chatbots? Absolutely, right? Does this mean that, whatever their goals are, of increasing access, increasing kind of preparing students for the AI workforce, it's just one more step that you need to do, right? It's just having this stuff available is not the silver bullet to essentially, you know what I mean, get your organization, to a AI ready place. Does that make
Of
sense?
course, it makes sense. But let's talk about this, right? So, why is this a big deal, right? Because it's just larger, right? But what?
It's very large. That's it.
All right. But also,
That's the only big deal.
I mean, I think there's also a point to center on that the core capability here that we're talking about is AI literacy, right, in the workplace is being built within because in ASU like that came later and all these services kind of were disjointed. I'm seeing these from the get-go. Let's just basically try to bring these services so that we move faster. So there's a sense of adoption that I think is beyond the technology, looking at the people, the process, the culture that I think they're addressing. And for me, that's a big deal. Do you agree? Do you think that's kind of water under the bridge? It's just size, or there's something different on prior tech adoptions, ASUs alike?
No, I still think ASU has done an amazing job and they're way ahead. So this is just a much larger deployment of of ChatGPT.
Interesting. Interesting.
So
Um,
we'll see what the impact is.
exactly right. At least maybe from how I consume the PR and whatnot, it seems that it has other components. So large an organization that is going to be fun. So what does that mean for higher education? What do you think this is going to be? Wishing them not only well, but being very successful. We love all these initiatives. What do you start seeing changes in student experience, if anything? I think it's going to be very interesting that they're starting to carve this lane of AI literacy as a core competency for universities, administrators, faculty, and students. So I really like that. What do you think changes in higher ed after this?
Well, I mean, we need this forward-thinking institutions, or at least we need this larger deployments, because a lot of institutions have been held back, and they need leaders to implement this technology, or to bring it into the classroom, or to bring it into their faculty and staff. So without that, it's very hard to be a president or to be a board and say, okay, now we're going to have all of our faculty use ChatGPT in their classroom. Well, what does that mean? Do you have the resources to implement that? Do you have the resources to change your curriculum? Do you have the resources to actually pay $20 a month or $30 a month for each student in order to do that? It's very, very difficult to move forward if you don't have a template of a larger system trying it and doing it. Are they going to be successful? I don't know. Is ASU been successful? Yes, they have. But ASU, it's a very, very different institution where everything is kind of centralized, and they operate in a very different way, in a more, and they're plugged into the technology. CSU, I don't know. There's 19 campuses. Is it going to work the same way? Are you going to be able to deploy the technology the same way? Probably not. But there's going to be, an openness now. At least you set the bar low to say, at least you get ChatGPT, and then we're going to provide additional wraparound services around that. It's going to take a year or so before you see any results in there. So, we'll have to wait and see.
Your point on the risks, I think it's super interesting. These type of play are difficult in nature, right? Because they go into digital transformation and sometimes it touches on behavior. I'm tenured.
That's exactly my point, is that just making the tool available, it doesn't do anything, right? The making the tool available is, a lot of the students are already probably using it, but changing policies and changing workflows and changing, how you do different, think about an AI first approach to how you do paperwork. Like the administrative systems are still the same. So just because you have ChatGPT now doesn't mean that you're changing your CRM or your communications or your engagement tools or your SISs. Like those are tools that are still going to be around, and those workflows are going to be around. So focusing on workflows is going to be really, really important rather than, oh, here's a technology. This reminds me, JC, and of course you need to do this first, right, in order to get it started. But it reminds me on the laptops that where everybody got a laptop. Like if a student doesn't have a laptop or doesn't have access to it, like you basically give a laptop to everybody. You include it as part of their tuition or whatever, but you now have everybody on the same platform, and you assume that you're teaching, or you assume that you have certain access to this foundational technology.
That's a good analogy, because what I guess we're centering around is this is exciting, right? And it looks like there's an investment in centralizing technology infrastructure. It's smart, aka the laptop. Everyone has the same device. But from the laptop vibe, everyone has it, to now education is uniform, homogeneous, improving outcomes, all those kind of metrics that allows us to say that investment actually pay off, took years or actually never realized. So it'll be very interesting to see how they start thinking about the outcomes. And yeah, faculty adoption, not the same thing as looking at administrative adoption or student adoption. For me to wrap up, Ardis, I don't know if there's something else you want to chat about here, but is if this is the largest and the second one that we've seen, is there a precedent that now they're setting? So when the next one, the third one, they're gonna be looking at this, is like, I have to do it like that. Is there something you're seeing that it's replicable, repeatable, and informs how it should be done? Or is it too early? I am the Bible, like, I don't know. It just feels like the only precedent is you pick a tech and you force it, and then we'll see what happens. But do you see something different here?
I mean, 2 years ago, and over the last 2 years, we've been doing AI literacy, and the number one questions that we always got was, well, my faculty members don't want to use it. Like we're banning it. We're using AI detectors in order to see if students actually cheated or not. So this goes against and actually moves everybody forward. It's another data point, or it's kind of a leader in, hey, the future is going to, no matter what you do, you're going to need to adopt this AI tools and this AI platforms. And the faster you do it, the better your constituents and your students are going to be. Is there going to be some pain? Yes. But this is a really, really good, stamp of approval that AI is here to stay, and specifically these AI applications and AI chatbots and AI assistants, right? They're going to be part of our lives, and how we do work and how we learn and so on and so forth.
AI is here to stay. Good for us. Shall we do the catch up part? Shall we go into the next segment here? Very,
Yeah,
very.
yeah. Speaking of catch up, speaking of AI is here to stay. It's actually been accelerated. So we talked a lot about the 3 episodes on agentic AI, and what's been really interesting is that this last 2 weeks, there's been a tremendous talk everywhere, mainstream media, on Deepseek. So Deepseek has been kind of the conversation on AI. And for those of you who haven't kind of followed up, Deepseek is new AI model. So there's two models. One of them, Deepseek
R1.
Research, and the other one, Deepseek R1, which is a reasoning model. It's available here in the US and through an app as well. But it's actually a Chinese company who developed the model. And the biggest impact, or why this took the AI world by storm over the last 2 weeks, and also the markets, is that there is a lot of really great innovations that went into training this new model. And perhaps the biggest signal was that this model apparently was trained with, the training cost was only $6 million. So that is the number one key on why our financial systems and why everybody was freaking out, at least on the market side, because before we thought, in order to train a model at this capability, which is up there with the reasoning models from OpenAI with O1 and so on and so forth, you needed to have hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, in compute in order to train a model of this capability.
Right.
What the Chinese researchers at Deepseek have shown is that they have innovated on multiple levels of the technology. They have innovated on the way they do a lot of different things in there. This is called a mixture of experts model. So they've innovated in how they do that, the attention and how they do the reasoning. Now, there is, debate if this is actually cost 6 million or it costs a lot more than that. Most likely it costs a lot more than that, but that is not the point. There's really true innovation that's happened here, and it's coming from China. So the whole idea is, wow, China has been kind of in the background, and we are now starting. Essentially, this has been the Sputnik moment for AI
Nice
here
reference.
in the US,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
So the Sputnik moment is, if you remember, well, I wasn't around, of course, but this is in the,
As we've been told.
It started the space,
Yep.
the
Space
space
race,
war,
yeah.
right? Space race, right. So the Sputnik was, was purely the first satellite that the Russians put into orbit, but it freaked out the US. And now it propelled a lot of innovation and essentially a lot of resources to say, we have to win the space war. And of course, we all know what happened there and the resources, but this is another one. This is another Sputnik moment where a Chinese player has come into the market with a very inexpensive model that is so far ahead of where this type of model with this type of resources should be able to be. And the US folks are behind. So now this will kind of propel the innovation that's happening. What I truly think is that DeepSeek is, first of all, it's an amazing engineering feat, and they've done some really incredible things that a lot of the other research labs are taking into it. But what it's done is that it's open source. So a reasoning model that's open source. The open weights are available. It's being incorporated in a lot of different kind of, runtimes and so on and so forth. But it's also pushing the price down drastically. Right. So it's much smaller. It's, the reasoning component of it. If you haven't had a chance to play with it, I'm not sure if the app is still available now, or you can download it because it was blocked a couple of days ago. And then also the capacity was, but essentially, it's the first model that it gives you the reasoning behind what's happening. It shows you exactly the reasoning on how it's thinking about a question. And this reasoning models is what is making agentic AI possible today, and what's going to kind of unlock agentic AI, because you need this reasoning models in order for agents to reason about problems and to reason about, tool use and so on and so forth. And hence, where we are today is an acceleration of the AI applications. Right. No longer do we now think like, oh, all the money needs to go into the big labs in order, and that's your defendable moat in terms of you build these large language models and you put millions or billions of dollars into it, and then that model is going to like provide all of the economics to you. Now that's shifting. It's like, wait a minute. You can, the models are getting commoditized, and the value is transitioning to actually the applications and building of the applications. So this change in framework in the research and the model build versus now it's the usage of those models, right? It's the usage and the applications that the value is going into. So hence why everybody kind of freaked out, because most of the money was like most of the NVIDIA hardware or the AI was being bought by the big labs. And then when everybody's like, well, you can build this stuff for a lot cheaper. And of course, everybody shorted NVIDIA. So we saw the story, which is unfounded, by the way. There's a counter argument that it's called Javin's paradigm. I'm not sure exactly the name, but essentially what that says is that the cheaper you make something, right, the technology, the more usage is going to have. So if you have, let's say, the cheaper you make transportation, so the cheaper you make gas, people are going to travel a lot more and they're going to consume more of it.
Yeah.
So in this case, it's like the cheaper you make the technology and the AI, people are going to consume a lot more and they're going to build a lot more stuff. And eventually they're going to spend more money on NVIDIA because, those are the foundations here. So just wrapping it all up. Do you have any questions?
No, I'm good. So I just want to recap everybody. So we're talking about Deepseek, specifically R1, open source, matches GTP4, and as Ardis just walk us through, this is an engineering feed, right? And it's basically deployed to us at a much lower cost. There's three important things that come from Deepseek, right? Is the idea that opens up this conversation or question mark on U.S. Dominance on the AI race, and now it basically says not only U.S., China enters the picture. And towards your later point, I think is really, really exciting and interesting for us to talk about. Well, in a Chinese capability and kind of how they introduce technology and they globalize, it's a capability towards doing more with less, right? We've seen that in manufacturers, and that basically has been introduced. It's exciting. It democratizes AI. It gives a new paradigm on how, like, the true cost of this, and then we saw everyone's 401ks being affected by it. The geopolitics is interesting. I just wanted to basically slow down the geopolitics because what has happened, right, is that it became the largest download on the app stores, and then all of a sudden the whole constraints, basically the walls of accessibility come down, and you cannot use it if you're in the government, things like that, because there is the Chinese factor on it behind the scenes of privacy.
Well, I want to separate. There's two things in there.
Yeah, that's what before we move on, I want to talk about that because people may be saying, but if you get it, they're going to be spying on you. Like, let's talk about,
Yes.
what do we know so far about the safety of it and like the TikTok vibes of it. Like, it's Chinese and therefore, there's propaganda and all those type of things. So talk more about the geopolitics of this.
So we have to separate, and this is perhaps one of the misconceptions of these models is that
Yeah.
the model is open source, so open weights, so you can download it and you can run it on your machine, and it's small enough that you can run it on your machine, and you don't need. It's just a computer program that runs on your machine. It doesn't phone home. There's nothing like that, right? It's basically a whole bunch of math that runs on your machine, and it predicts the next word and the next word and so on and so forth. However, not everybody can do it. It can run these models on their machines. So there's a cloud provider that you run it on. So somebody puts together a nice front end to it, which is the ChatGPT or the conversational interface, and then you interact with the model through this nice website. And then the model, like that website, is actually hosted. In this case, in Deepseek, it's hosted in China or Singapore or whatever it is, right? So the company that hosts that model and hosts it for you, they're, the Chinese company. So they'll save the data, and your data, if you use it through the app or through their website, it's going to be stored in China and it's going to be used through that. So that's why a lot of people are blocking the website and the app, because you're essentially downloading a Chinese website, or you're downloading something that's your data can be now private. Now, the model itself, it's open. So Amazon actually can run it on their infrastructure here in the US, and you can use it through there. You can run it through Azure, or you can run it through any other provider. And of course, you can run it through Perplexity. If you have Perplexity, you can see now a new switch in there. If you have Perplexity Pro, it says, do you want to use the R1 model? And then it's like, yeah, of course. So it runs in the Perplexity cloud. It's just an open source model. So just don't use the DeepSeek website or the app, because those are hosted by the actual creators of DeepSeek, and they run on their infrastructure, which is not located here in the US. So those are the differences.
Love that tip. Yeah. And this stems to the idea that we've been talking about here when we talk about AI tech stacks, that the brains, the models, right, is something that we can benefit. And the punchline here is that we now have a new brain. Sure, you can run it on a foreign cloud that was trained and is more accessible through the lens of cost and investment. So very, very exciting. A lot to be said. It's new, and we'll see what happens. Artists, should we move to the other ones? We need to talk about Operator. We need to talk about Deepseek, not Deep Search, Deepseek. There's also O3, and like there's a lot of stuff happening here. So which ones do you want to chat about today?
Well, so I want to kind of continue this thread, right? And which is really, really exciting for people who are building AI applications right now. So now we're seeing the cost, drop tremendously. So there's now a lot of pressure. You have a very capable model with DeepSeek R1 that's a reasoning model, and then OpenAI has now gone in and dropped their prices. Google just released Gemini 2.0 Flash models as well, which are include reasoning models as well. So there are a lot of capabilities that have been put out there, but the cost has gone down tremendously. And this is very exciting for us because we're going to see a lot more applications out there, and we're going to see a lot more integration of AI in a lot of these different tools. And agentic AI is becoming more and more capable, because with agentic AI, if you remember, there's this reasoning engine that happens, and using tools, it's not just a one shot, right? It uses a lot of AI, a lot of tokens, and it uses this loops back and forth. So it's very costly to ask an agent to do something. It can cost you anywhere between just a few cents to maybe a couple of dollars, depending on how long it goes. So the cost is going down. Very exciting for us that are building AI, and you're going to see a lot more of it. What we've seen over the last couple of weeks is that OpenAI is now moving into and introducing a few different agents as part of ChatGPT, right? So ChatGPT, again, is a product, but now they're introducing agents as part of it. They started the year with a really, really interesting, I wanted to talk about this one, with a really interesting one, which was the model that reminded you of things, right? So it's basically a scheduler model. So have you used that one, JC, yet?
I have actually.
Okay, so what do you use it for? This is the GPT 4.0 with scheduled tasks. Essentially, what it is, it's like you put in a prompt and say, go ahead and research or give me a summary of all of the news that happened around this topic, and kind of summarize it for me every 2 days or every day at 6 a.m. So you're essentially queuing a chat GPT thread, but you're scheduling it for later, and it's happening every so often. What do you use it for?
I tried to use it in two things at home. There's this kind of calendar that we follow. So basically, it's on the prep for the calendar. Didn't really work for me because the way I need to connect the calendar and there's no invites, but just basically keeping us into the fluency of the calendar and the prep, right? So sometimes I forget things, or one of the things that happens to me is that when the calendar comes in, it's so far ahead that I just I see the day before. So basically getting those kind of tasks. There's this, speaking of calendar at work, we have these quarterly setups that we've done in terms of, and I'm responsible, as you know, to like help us manage the strategic management of it. So basically creating reminders of when these need to be going out. So I'm using it more as a reminder tasker to stay on cadence. And I used it this week, and it worked really, really interesting, right? I'm trying to get a new application there. Can talk about it, but what about you? How are you using it? Yeah.
I've only tested it a couple of times. I haven't really used it for anything, to be honest. But just because it doesn't fit my workflow very well, and I have other things that
That's the point, right? That you need. I find myself submitting to it. That's what I'm saying. Life didn't work for me, so now I'll give this work thing that maybe it would work. Super.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of people use it, for things like affirmations or like daily, kind of feedback and things like that, which is really, really interesting. But the other drop, or the other one that was really nicely anticipated, which is the new agent that OpenAI dropped, was Operator. And Operator is essentially autonomously completes tasks, but think about AI using a computer screen. So it's using an AI agent that is using a computer. So you give it a task, and it uses the browser and it actually understands, and it looks at the browser, and then it operates on its own. It means that it clicks through a website, it fills in forms, it reasons about what to do next. It essentially, it's like somebody using a website or somebody using a browser in order to accomplish work. So that's Operator. Now, this is really, really interesting because it's the first time, well, it's actually the second time, because Anthropic introduced something similar, which is computer use tool, but it was very complicated. With Operator, they have gotten a lot of things right, and it can actually autonomously do a lot of work. So you can ask it to go ahead and book a restaurant, or go ahead and book a flight, or go ahead, in our case, in higher education, like if you were somebody, you can say, go ahead and research my website to see if you can find X, or go ahead and find events that are relevant to me for Y. So it goes ahead and uses the websites, and it kind of does all the research, and it clicks things through. You can also use it to fill out forms. I'm starting to use it a little bit more around kind of outreach or LinkedIn outreach, because it's able to go in and it can hand you access to the browser as well. So it's kind of a collaborator with you, right? It's like an assistant agent model, where if it gets stopped, it'll ask you, hey, can you give me the credentials of your LinkedIn, because I don't have them. So you can take control, you can enter your credentials, log in, and then you'll go from there now to continue the task. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a very interesting. I've seen videos on how it works. Unfortunately, is behind the pro package, so you have to do the $200 a month subscription. So I haven't played with it myself. Here's my takeaway on it, as an inference from looking at videos and how people use it. It seems slow, so it's not there, but it's exciting that the technology has the transparency that I can see this thing clicking buttons. And as a matter of fact, you can stare at it, or like let it run on the background. Like sometimes you open this tab and you come back to it. Like literally it has that type of user experience. Number two, holy crap. Very interesting that you can do a lot of e-commerce, support you in this kind of transactional thing, which then takes me to my third point. Do I trust my credit cards in these environments? Do I trust this type of security on my ID, my persona, to like take it to the next level? And if the answer is yes, this is very exciting. If you're one of those that doesn't feel comfortable with it, it's going to be limited, because it needs to have passwords, it needs to have logins to really
Yeah.
deliver next level. So there's an aspect of trust.
Right. So it's not your browser. It's actually like it's a browser that's in the data center or whatever, and it's using that browser. So it doesn't have all your passwords. It doesn't have all that, and that's perhaps why things are so slow. So if this is able to work on your browser, it'll be a lot faster. But it's actually working on a different browser. So like those passwords and everything kind of gets wiped out after that session. So it's kind of a single use session. At least that's what the documentation and what everybody says. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. This is the first iteration of this. It's amazing at what he can do and how autonomously he can do that. He can do work and can work for minutes and sometimes even longer than that, hours, and kind of accomplish things. Think about it in the research context. Think about it as doing research for schools. It's like, okay, go to this website and go to this website and pull this information, and then go to this one and fill in a form. So that's going to be a lot easier because most of our interfaces today are through the browser, and that's the interface of these agents. So that's why the first iteration is, hey, teach the AI agents how to use the websites or how to use a browser. And then the next phase is going to be, okay, now we're going to embed that as part of your screens. So it has all your context around it. And then the next phase will be websites actually having, tooling that agents can actually use, without going through the interface. But that's the future. But I really like Operator. It's pretty cool. To be honest, I have not incorporated into like daily work that I do, but I've done a whole bunch of testing, and I really, really appreciate kind of what they've done here so far.
Your next business trip, let's make sure that it gets bought and sourced by Operator. See how that'd be fun.
Yeah.
Speaking of things that are behind the Pro subscription, can we please talk about Deep Search? I'm really excited about this one, Artist. And have you used it?
I think I have used it more than any other feature on the Pro. So you have Sora on Pro, you have Operator, you have obviously some of the other. I think Deep Research is, I got to say, it's my favorite tool that they have added or favorite agent. So, what that means, what Deep Research is, so if you have Gemini Advanced, and if you buy that, you have something called Gemini with Deep Research. So, what it does, it's an agent that they build on Gemini, and it will go through and pull in hundreds of different websites. You can ask it a question, it will decompose that question with different steps. It will go do the research and then come back and summarize and give you a report, give you a 10,000 page report, 20,000 page report. But it's actually, it's okay. It's not the greatest, right? OpenAI now has introduced Deep Search, which is very similar. And what it will do is that you can ask it a question and it will come back and ask you clarifying questions, JC. It's actually going to come back and ask you clarifying questions. And one of the things that's really, really interesting, let me see if I have it in here. So this way we can take a look at one.
And I think this is the one that I love to showcase because as we see it, it has a really interesting connection in academia. Research and scholars have been saying this is one of the most promising agents that have been deployed. So I was looking at the notes from Ethan Mollock, and then he's like, this is very exciting for scholars. So let's see it, Arts.
Yeah. So what I did here is internally, we're working on an ideal customer profile here at Element. And what I needed is we need to have a scoring model around this customer profile. So the first thing that I did is I asked it, hey, do some market research to build our ICP scoring based on maximum of 5 variables for the Element prospects. Here's kind of the market size chart. I gave it a couple of a little research that I had before. I didn't need to do that, but I said focus on community colleges, maybe some state schools, and then he came back and asked me a couple of clarifying questions. It's like, okay, to create this ICP, it's like, what do you think about these things, like key variables? Do you want, like, what factors matter most for you? So he comes back and kind of drives you to a specific, so it does some reasoning, right, in order to come back to that.
Which is spot on, by the way.
It's spot on, of course. Yeah, this is incredible. And then I provided it some more feedback around those questions, and then he went ahead and said, "Great, I got it. I'm going to develop this ICP for you on the scoring model, and then here's what we're going to do." So we went back and it did research for 8 minutes, right? 8 minutes, and it used 15 sources. So you can see over here, it used 15 sources, and you can see the thinking and the reasoning behind it. So it's actually going through step by step, looking at the ICP, doing research, coming back, digesting and reasoning around that research, going back and doing more research and more searches, coming back, and essentially it put together a really extended ICP scoring model for us with kind of data-backed insights on the best institutions, why those are that way. So think about this as a KPMG, or think about this as a, like a BCG, or like one of the big consulting firms, and this is what they're doing. So the cost of this research is now gone to, I guess, $200 maybe, for 100 of these, because you only get 100 of these every month, right? You get 100 of these deep research questions every month. But here's what we did.
So it's $2. If you get 100 of these and you're paying $200, so these researches this costs $2. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Just to contextualize it, I did a similar approach at the company through a data science approach. So we got the data, we fit a model, we basically ended up with certain type of heuristics and the scores 15 18 hours later, right? Multiply and add my hours and our data scientist hours. So and we're not a KPMG type of outfit that would charge this. So just internal cost to the organization, I don't know, easily this was a $10,000 project in Ardis about 2 weeks. 8 minutes, $2. This is just basically what we're seeing here is how this world, it's exciting and it changes in front of our eyes.
Yeah. So this can produce a research paper for
Yeah.
you. Even I would say not necessarily a PhD, but the difference between deep search and what Google has, I'm sure they'll improve it with deep research. Google just produces a lot of sources, but it doesn't reason through those sources. So this is where the more capable models that OpenAI has produced, and it uses a lot of the O3 models underneath it, right? It does these reasoning models, similar to what we just talked about, Deep Search R1.
But Ardis, been hearing a lot of comments that this is PhD-like, as in, if you were to have a PhD student work on a paper, this is what they produce, right? And it has that level of capacity. By the way, Ardis, just as a side note, you know how we speak about cars in horsepower as a unit of power? I've been thinking a lot, what is the unit of power of this type of LLM? So I've been thinking about PhD students. So like it's 2 PhD students, 3 PhD students. And there's something about smarts that you introduced early on that I think it's starting to catch on, because what you're trying to understand is how powerful these things are. And they have a construct of, in the case of cars, an animal, or which was the prior thing that carried us. So now there's something about the researcher, the PhD that is emergent is very interesting. Very interesting. Love this. So Ardis, we can keep on going on this. There are many other things that we need to talk about. We need to talk about tools like Replit, O3. But today we need to bring this to a conclusion. Everybody, CSU is in front of us with an opportunity to standardize an AI practice to infrastructure, wishing them a ton of good luck. But for you listeners, and if you're able to benefit from the Pro subscriptions, very interesting tools in front of you. And I appreciate Ardis's demo here in how OpenAI Deep Research is helping him and the company. Ardis, want to send us off?
Till next time, everybody, this is exciting. If you need to understand more tool uses or some of these other tools that are available, I would highly recommend that you attend our AI Engage Summit. It's actually at the end of the month, at the end of February, 24th and 25th, or 25th and 26th. You can go to the Element website and register for it. It's going to be 2 days with packed sessions. It's virtual sessions.
And we're kicking off.
Yeah, we're kicking off. That's right.
Keynotes. We're keynotes.
All right, everyone. Till next time. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Generation AI is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you're going to like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing weekly, and we've got a wide range of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed leaders and professionals like you find their next big idea. They feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts, like Jamie Hunt, Seth Odell, Jenny Lee Fowler, Brian Gross, and many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform that's helping institutions all over the country create meaningful, personalized, and engaging connections with their prospects and students. Learn more at element451.com.